I'm ready, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for asking.
You are live.
Thank you. And thank you, Delegate Aritz. Good afternoon, colleagues. Today is January the 27th, and it is once again time. We have two hearings today. We have one from our vice chair. We have one from the chairman of our utilities. So we'll start with Delegate Brooks. This has the least amount of witnesses. I believe he has two witnesses, himself included. Delegate Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby, and members of my committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of HB 341 as the Public Service Commission's reporting requirement. Requirement, and on its annual net metering report to the General Assembly. But they want to change that from September 1 through November 1 of each year, and eliminate the need for a separate reporting requirement relating to customers' education about retail energy customer choice. Yeah, currently, under the Public Utilities Article, the PSC must submit its annual report no later than September 1 of each year. Extending the deadline to November 1 will allow the PSC additional time to gather the information, seek clarification from the utility companies, and timely submit its finding to the General Assembly. Further, HB 341 seeks to eliminate the need for the PSC to separately report to the General Assembly the status of its efforts to educate customers on customer choice. This information is already reported by the PSC in its annual report that's due in May of each year. Therefore, removing this provision does not eradicate the PSC's obligations to educating customers about customer choice, nor does it eliminate the PSC requirements to report to the PSC. Since this information is already encompassed within this annual reporting, the modification does not negatively impact the customers. For that reason, I request a favorable report, and I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Brooks, for that testimony on this very edgy and progressive bill. Seeing no questions, we'll go to our first and I believe only witness, Joey Chen.
Good afternoon, Chair Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby, and committee members. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I believe Delegate Brooks, I believe you're not muted. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chair Wilson and committee members. My name is Joey Chen. I'm the Senior Advisor to PSC Chairman Jason Stanek, and I want to thank everyone today for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 341. House Bill 341 is simply a cleanup bill that shifts the month in which the the Commission's net metering report would be due. And as Delegate Brooks mentioned, it would be allow enough time for the Commission to collect and report on a full set of data obtained from our utilities. Now, although we request this data from the utilities, we often do not receive it in time to meet the current reporting due date. So this bill would fix that. House Bill 341 also removes an annual reporting requirement regarding customer choice, and we view this requirement as duplicative because the Commission already reports on these efforts in our comprehensive annual report each year in May. The Commission reports information on its efforts to provide resources and educational information to help customers make their informed decisions about choosing an energy supplier. The Commission's 2021 annual report, for example, provides details on the launch and success of 2 new customer choice websites, and it also includes enrollment data for electric choice customers in the state, just to give you an example. So for these reasons, I would urge a favorable report on House Bill 341, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
I see one question here, Delegate Chi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question is quite simple, and it's a simple bill, sounds like.
So I can understand the advantage of moving it by 2 months for this first year, right? You need more time to collect data, but going forward, that advantage would disappear because it's still a 12 months window,
Want
isn't
to
it?
get out of this. You meant to meet me downstairs. for
1 second, Delegate. Thank you. Go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, so, going forward in future years, it's still a 12-month period, right?
Delegate, if that,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chen.
Delegate, I'd be happy to answer that question. You are correct. It is an annual report, so the cycle is for 12 months. What this shift would do is a practical consideration, if you will, of the time needed for our commission staff to receive the requested net metering data from our utilities. So the data reporting period is the same. However, the allotted amount of time in order to issue the data requests, obtain the data requests, review them, analyze them, and then compile them into the report, we believe that we can do that with this additional, extra time in order to meet the timely reporting.
And I might add, Delegate, that it's not creating any complication or any consequences for the ratepayers.
Okay, so I assume, there is still advantage to doing it better with more time the first year, and then going forward, it hopefully would be easier to do that, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Hearing none, that completes the hearing on House Bill 341. Next, we'll have a hearing on House Bill 228, which is Delegate Crosby's bill. Vice Chair Crosby.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and distinguished members of the Economic Matters Committee. For the record, Delegate Brian Crosby presenting House Bill 228, Public Service Commission rate suspension proceedings. Currently, the time frame for the Public Service Commission has to review the alternative rates is too short, and the PSC is constantly extending the 30-day suspension period as these processes are complex and require multiple parties to investigate, conduct discovery, and introduce evidence. In 2021, the commission processed the state's first 2 electric and gas utility multi-year rate cases. And in both cases, they were extremely challenging to process under the existing time frame because these multi-year requests take such a long time to work through. In the future, these cases will be even more complex as the commission will need to consider both the prudency of the utilities actions in the prior multi-year period and the proposed spending for the next 3 years. Additional time to verify and review the information will improve the multi-year rate cases for quality and content. 39 other states already have a longer time frame than the current 150-day that Maryland has. And what we are proposing, and there's an amendment from the PSC, which I think is a friendly amendment, I have no issues adjusting it. We would give them more time up front, so 180 days up front, and then 90 days to review the multi-year requests if they need for additional purposes. And we're simply asking that we give the PSC more time to review the complex process and in these certain cases. And for these reasons, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 228.
Thank you. Any questions for the good delegate? All right, first witness we have today testifying is Andrew McCullough.
Good afternoon, Chair Wilson. Jason Stanek here. Drew McCullough, I believe, will follow me if that's acceptable.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. I didn't see your name. I see. Go ahead.
Quite all right. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Jason Stanek here, Chairman of the Maryland Public Service Commission. As you know, we are the state's independent utility regulator. The PSC is responsible for setting just and reasonable utility rates that are in the public interest, and we do so in accordance with the Public Utilities Article and the principles of rate regulation. As some of you may remember back from the 2019 legislative session, the PSC has embraced alternative forms of rate making, and Maryland has joined a number of states to now allow multi-year rate applications. These proposals have the benefit of providing both regulatory certainty to the utilities in terms of their planning and their investments, but also to our utility customers because it provides them with a predictable and stable rate for a set number of years. And typically it's up to 3 years at this point. As Vice Chair Crosby just noted, in 2020 and 2021, we processed our very first 2 requests for a multi-year rate proposal, but we quickly realized that they're much more complicated than the traditional rate cases that we've processed for over 100 years. So they do require much more time to process. This bill would provide not only the Public Service Commission, but the parties to our proceedings with an additional 90 days to our existing 180-day clock to process any request to use one of these alternative forms of rate making. I should note that even with this extension, Maryland will continue to process rate cases much faster than most of the other states in the country. And of course, any traditional rate cases would not be affected by this legislation. They would continue under the 180-day clock. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to testify. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to now Drew McCullough.
Good afternoon, Chairman Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby, and committee members. I'm Drew McCullough, Director of the Electricity Division at the Maryland Public Service Commission. I'm representing the Commission's technical staff. Technical staff is a party to all rate proceedings before the Commission. However, we are an independent party. We provide our recommendations to the Commission, which the Commission may or may not act upon. House Bill 228 will give staff and other parties an appropriate amount of time to review and analyze the vast amount of data involved in alternative forms of rate making. Traditional rate proceedings require the review of one 12-month historic test year over a 6-month suspension period to approve rates. Multi-year rate plans require technical staff to analyze 5 different test years: the historical test year, a bridge year, and the 3 forecasted rate effective years over the same 6-month suspension period. Multi-year rates rely heavily on forecasts and projections to develop the revenue requirement and rates for future periods. The forecasted data include projections of sales, customer counts, capital budgets, and operating costs. It is staff job to scrutinize these data and offer objective testimony to the Commission to use in its decision regarding how much of a rate increase is just and reasonable. The discovery process is intensive in these cases involving thousands of pages of testimony and data. Staff needs to understand a theoretical basis of the forecasts, the variables included in the forecasts, and how forecasts are adjusted. Finally, multi-year rate plans will become more complex over time when subsequent multi-year rate plans include prudency reviews of prior multi-year rate plans. Thus, in addition to the 5 years associated with the new proposed rates, the Commission will be reviewing the actual spending of the prior 3 years from the first multi-year rate plan. This prudency review may require a true-up or change the utility's revenue requirement and/or rates. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 228. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, we'll move on to Fran Francis. Ms. Francis.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Fran Francis. I am Senior Vice President and General Counsel for the Apartment and Office Building Association. And AOPA is a nonprofit trade association, and we represent 60 million square feet of commercial space, as well as 296,000 apartment units in Maryland. We participate and have participated in both PEPCO and Washington Gas Light rate proceedings for over 40 years. I base this testimony in support of HB 228 based on that years of experience and participation in 2 recent multi-year rate proceedings, one for PEPCO in Maryland and one for PEPCO in the District of Columbia. I fully support all of the remarks of Drew McCullough as well as Jason Stanek, and I won't repeat what they said here. We have provided written testimony that also is in support of Jason Stanek's remarks and Drew McCullough's. However, as an aside, from participating in the PEPCO multi-year rate plan in the District of Columbia, that case was filed on May 30th, 2019. A decision wasn't issued by the Public Service Commission of the district until June 8th of 2021. That case took a full 2 years to litigate. And as testified to by the chairman, we are dealing with multiple years. We are dealing with the test year and as well as the bridge year, plus the forecasted years. And those forecasts take a lot of time to look at. Forecasts of what will happen in the future in terms of usage and what is necessary in terms of capital expenditures. So I don't have anything additional to add that wasn't in my written testimony, but I urge a favorable report on HB 228, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing no questions, we'll move on to our last remaining witness, David Lapp.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Wilson, Vice Chair Crosby. I'm David Lapp for the Office of People's Counsel. We support HB 228. As you know, our office is charged with protecting the interests of Maryland's residential customers and utility rate proceedings. The additional time this bill would allow in cases for alternative forms of rate making is critical for ensuring that ratepayers benefit and are not harmed from these complicated cases. To understand the need for HB 228's additional time, it's helpful to consider what has to happen in rate cases generally. The current time frame for completing a traditional case already presents significant challenges for our office. After a case is filed, we have to review that filing to identify the issues and the potential needs for experts to evaluate and potentially testify. Once we do that, we have to issue requests for proposals, and we have a waiting period for those responses under state regulation. We then have to evaluate those bids and select experts. Then the experts have to review the utilities' proposed rate and other changes.
Sir, hold on one second. Hey, Delegate Branch, could you mute yourself, please? Go ahead, sir.
So then we have discovery, and we go back and forth with the utilities, and usually there's follow-up discovery, there's written direct testimony, there's review of other parties' testimony and preparation of rebuttal, and then rebuttal testimony, all over a period of weeks and months. There's preparation for the hearing. There's the hearing itself, which takes place over multiple days. Then there's post-hearing briefing. And after all that, the commission has to make a decision and draft that decision. That's all in 210 days under current law. And that's for a regular rate case. In an alternative form of rate making case, we need more witnesses and the issues are even more complex. In the BGE case, we had 7 witnesses of our own without counting the witnesses of other parties. These cases, as you've heard, involve reviewing past year spending and performance and future year projections. The additional days provided in HB 228 will allow OPC and other interested parties to pursue greater transparency and insight into utility plans and ultimately to advocate for the interests of Maryland's residential customers before the commission. Finally, it's worth observing that additional time will become even more important as the commission looks to advance state policies to mitigate climate change. How rates are set and alternative forms of rate making have important implications for new and emerging technologies, including electric vehicle expansion, energy storage, energy efficiency, and other distributed energy resources. The additional time provided in the bill will help the state further those objectives. I would add that we support the testimony of the other parties that came before me, and we ask the committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you for the opportunity to testify here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Seeing no questions, that concludes this hearing. Colleagues, we have to be back on the floor at 1400 hours. So please get some lunch if you can. I believe we'll be in for about 2 more hours. Thank you guys very much. And we'll have announcements